You won't believe what these men found here. Lost in time and forgotten by most, the collapsed Soviet Union left behind some of the most haunting structures imaginable. Massive concrete buildings, secret military bases, and radioactive ghosts. Towns all have macabre stories that will shock you to the core. Curious? Join us and let's go. Number 17. Mausoleum of Bulgarian-Soviet Friendship. Overlooking the Black Sea from a hill near Varna, Bulgaria stands a massive concrete monument resembling a winged spacecraft or abstract bird. This imposing structure, formerly named the Monument to Bulgarian-Soviet Friendship, measures 48 meters wide and 23 meters tall, visible from miles away along Bulgaria's coast. Construction began in 1974 under direct Soviet supervision, with over 27,000 volunteer workers contributing labor in what communist authorities described as a demonstration of socialist solidarity. The monument's design incorporated massive, stylized wings representing the protective embrace of the Soviet Union over Bulgaria, with a central promenade lined with concrete sculptures depicting Soviet and Bulgarian soldiers and workers standing together. Number 16. Duga Radar, Ukraine. Rising from the forests near Chernobyl stands one of the Cold War's most impressive and mysterious structures, the Duga Radar Array. This massive steel lattice wall stretches nearly half a kilometer long and towers almost 500 feet high, earning it the nickname Steel Giant among locals. Western observers called it something else entirely, the Russian woodpecker, because of the distinct tapping noise it created on shortwave radio frequencies worldwide. The Soviet military constructed Duga-1 in the 1970s as part of an early warning missile defense system. Its purpose? To detect American intercontinental ballistic missiles within minutes of their launch, giving Soviet leadership precious time to organize a counterstrike. The system cost roughly $7 billion in today's dollars and represented the cutting edge of Soviet military technology. Number 15. Urbani Radio Telescope Complex. Deep in Latvian forest stands a massive 32-meter satellite dish once used to spy on NASA communications, military transmissions, and even civilian phone calls across the Western world. The Urbane Radio Telescope Complex, formerly known as Object Zvezda, Star, was one of the Soviet Union's most secret facilities, so classified that it appeared as a fictional children's pioneer camp on official maps. The Soviets built this massive listening station in the 1970s in a remote coastal forest deliberately selected for its natural radio interference protection. Mountains to the east blocked Soviet radio signals from reaching the sensitive receivers, while the Baltic Sea to the west provided clear reception of Western communications. At its peak, over 2,000 military personnel and scientists operated this massive electronic ear pointed toward NATO countries. I have a question for you. First, I would like to say that it is possible to follow the greatest curiosities of our world every day. But to do so, you need to be subscribed to our channel. So, are you already subscribed? If not, take the opportunity to subscribe now. Also, take the opportunity to like the video, so YouTube will recommend more videos from our channel, so leave your like right now. And now that you have done that, let's go. Number 14. Pripyat, Ukraine. Hidden in the shadows of nuclear disaster, Pripyat stands frozen in time since that fateful day in 1986. When Chernobyl's Reactor 4 exploded, it released more than 400 times the radiation of the Hiroshima bomb, forcing nearly 50,000 residents to evacuate with only hours' notice. They left behind everything: apartments still filled with personal belongings, an amusement park scheduled to open just days later, and schools with assignments still written on chalkboards. The Chernobyl exclusion zone now spans roughly 1,000 square miles, with Pripyat at its heart. The abandoned city's iconic Ferris wheel, never officially used, has become the haunting symbol of nuclear catastrophe. The Palace of Culture's empty swimming pool, collapsing theater, and decaying library showcase Soviet architectural grandeur, now reclaimed by nature. Number 13. Buzluja Monument, Bulgaria. Perched atop a remote Bulgarian mountain peak stands a structure so bizarre it looks like an alien spacecraft crashed into Earth. The Buzluja Monument, a massive concrete UFO-shaped building, wasn't built to commemorate extraterrestrial contact, but something the Soviet regime considered equally important: socialism's arrival in Bulgaria. Construction began in 1974, demanding 7 years, 6,000 workers, and 14 million Bulgarian levs, equivalent to over $35 million today. The Bulgarian army led the project, bringing in acclaimed artists to create elaborate communist mosaics covering over 900 square meters of wall space inside the main hall. These intricate artworks depicted communist heroes, workers, and idealized Soviet imagery in vibrant red, gold, and green tiles. Number 12. Kadykchan, Russia. Deep in Siberia's Magadan region lies a perfectly preserved Soviet ghost town where time stopped in the 1990s. Kadykchan was once a thriving coal mining settlement of 10,000 residents. Today, apartments still contain furniture, books remain on shelves, and photos hang on walls, all abandoned when the town died almost overnight. The town's dark history began in the 1930s when Stalin's prisoners built it in temperatures reaching 60 degrees Celsius. These gulag workers constructed apartment blocks and mining facilities under brutal conditions, with many dying during construction. For decades afterward, Kadykchan supplied coal to power plants across the Soviet Far East. Residents enjoyed relatively comfortable lives despite the remote location, with the town featuring schools, cultural centers, and shops well stocked by Soviet standards. Number 11. Paldiski, Estonia. Along Estonia's limestone coastline lies Paldiski, a Soviet ghost that refused to die. Once a top-secret submarine base completely closed to outsiders, this naval facility housed over 16,000 Soviet troops and contained something far more concerning than conventional weapons: nuclear reactors used to train submarine commanders in handling atomic technology. The Soviets seized this coastal area in 1939, forcibly removing the local Estonian population and transforming the sleepy fishing village into a closed military zone. For decades, even Soviet citizens needed special permission to enter Paldiski. Inside its heavily guarded perimeter, the Navy constructed a miniature Soviet city with apartment blocks, military buildings, and 2 full-sized nuclear submarine reactors housed in massive concrete bunkers. Number 10. Semipalatinsk Test Site, Kazakhstan. In eastern Kazakhstan lies a landscape so contaminated that simply standing on its soil for extended periods remains dangerous decades later. The Semipalatinsk Test Site, known locally as the Polygon, served as the Soviet Union's primary nuclear testing ground. What makes this site particularly disturbing isn't just the 456 nuclear detonations conducted there, but the deliberate exposure of nearby civilians to radiation. Soviet scientists conducted these tests between 1949 and 1989, with explosions equivalent to 2,500 Hiroshima bombs. While underground tests comprise the majority, 116 explosions occurred in the open atmosphere, sending radioactive clouds drifting over populated areas. Unlike American test sites in remote Nevada deserts, Semipalatinsk sits frighteningly close to communities. The city of Seme, formerly Semipalatinsk, lies just 93 miles away. Number 9. Kopachi Village, Ukraine. Only 2 kindergartens and crumbling foundations remain of what was once a thriving Ukrainian village. Located just 2 miles from the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, Kopachi received some of the highest radiation doses when Reactor 4 exploded in 1986. Unlike the more famous Pripyat, Kopachi disappeared almost completely from the landscape. Before the disaster, nearly 1,000 people called this farming community home. After evacuation, Soviet cleanup crews made a catastrophic decision. Rather than leave the contaminated buildings standing like in Pripyat, they buried Kopachi underground. Workers demolished buildings and pushed them into trenches, covering everything with soil in an attempt to contain radiation. Number 8. Pyramiden, Norway. Above the Arctic Circle on Norway's Svalbard archipelago sits a Soviet ghost town where polar bears now outnumber humans. Pyramiden, named for the pyramid-shaped mountain behind it, stands as one of the world's northernmost settlements and possibly its most well-preserved Soviet time capsule. The Soviet Union purchased this tiny coal mining town from Sweden in 1927, developing it into a showcase Arctic community. At its peak in the 1980s, nearly 1,000 Soviet citizens lived in this remote outpost. Despite the harsh environment, Pyramiden offered surprising luxury: a cultural center with the world's northernmost grand piano, a heated swimming pool, library, theater, and even a greenhouse growing fruits and vegetables in the Arctic darkness. Number 7. Škrunda 1, Latvia. Hidden deep in Latvian forests lies a once secret city that officially didn't exist. Škrunda 1 appeared on no public maps during the Cold War, housed thousands of Soviet military personnel and their families, and contained some of the USSR's most sensitive radar technology aimed at detecting American nuclear launches. Built in the 1960s, Škrunda 1 functioned as a closed city, a settlement completely controlled by the military where residents needed special permission to enter or leave. At its peak, roughly 5,000 people lived in this secret compound centered around two massive radar installations, Dnepr and Daryal, key components in the Soviet early warning system against NATO missile attacks. Number 6. Aniva Nuclear Lighthouse, Russia. On a tiny rock outcropping off Sakhalin Island's southern coast stands a 7-story concrete tower that once guided ships through treacherous, foggy waters. The Aniva lighthouse appears relatively ordinary until you discover what powered it: a nuclear reactor containing highly radioactive strontium-90. Built by the Soviets in 1939, the lighthouse originally used conventional power, but its remote location made refueling extremely difficult, especially during harsh winters when Sakhalin's seas became impassable. In the 1970s, Soviet engineers implemented an innovative but concerning solution, installing a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, RTG, containing strontium-90 with a half-life of 29 years. Number 5. Balaklava Submarine Base, Ukraine. Beneath a mountain on Crimea's southern coast lies one of the Cold War's most remarkable engineering feats, a submarine base built to survive direct nuclear strikes. The Balaklava submarine facility, known as Object 825 GTS, could house up to 7 nuclear-armed submarines simultaneously, all hidden inside a mountain and protected by massive blast doors. Construction began in 1957 under highest secrecy. For over 4 years, workers excavated over 126,000 cubic meters of rock to create a waterway tunnel system leading into a massive internal bay. The facility featured dry docks, repair shops, crew quarters, and even a nuclear decontamination system, all buried deep underground. At its operational peak, Balaklava could sustain 3,000 personnel for a month without any external supplies. Number 4. Lun-class Ekranoplan, Russia. On a beach in Derbent, Russia, sits what looks like a crashed spacecraft or a failed aircraft experiment, a massive wing-shaped vehicle with jet engines mounted above its nose and missile launchers along its spine. This bizarre machine represents one of the Soviet Union's most innovative and terrifying military developments, the Lun-class Ekranoplan, nicknamed the Caspian Sea Monster. Neither airplane nor ship, Ekranoplans utilized ground effect, an aerodynamic phenomenon that creates extra lift when flying close to a surface. This allowed the massive 380-ton vehicle to skim just 16 feet above water at speeds up to 340 MACABRE, too low for most radar to detect effectively, but much faster than any naval vessel. More importantly, it could carry nuclear missiles across seas, while remaining virtually invisible to Western defense systems. Number 3. Aralsk 7, Kazakhstan. On an island in what was once the Aral Sea sits perhaps the most dangerous abandoned Soviet facility, a biological weapons testing site where anthrax, smallpox, plague, and engineered superbugs were tested in the open air. Vozrojdeniya Island, Renaissance Island, housed the Soviet military's most secretive program, biological weapons development prohibited by international treaty. The Soviets established the facility in 1948, specifically selecting this remote island location to isolate deadly pathogens from population centers. At its peak, the complex employed over 1,500 scientists and support staff who developed and tested some of the most lethal biological agents ever created. The island's isolation ended in the 1990s when the Aral Sea began drying up due to Soviet irrigation projects, eventually connecting the former island to the mainland via a land bridge. Number 2. Soviet submarine K-219 Memorial, Russia. In a small park near Murmansk stands a ghostly memorial unlike any other, the actual conning tower of a nuclear submarine that nearly triggered an environmental catastrophe. The K-219 Memorial preserves the command center of a Soviet ballistic missile submarine that suffered a catastrophic accident in 1986, nearly resulting in a nuclear explosion in the Atlantic Ocean. The K-219 was a Navaga-class submarine carrying 16 nuclear missiles. When, on October 3, 1986, it experienced a major leak in a missile tube about 600 miles east of Bermuda. Seawater reacted with missile fuel, creating toxic gases and triggering a fire that quickly spread through the vessel. The submarine's captain, Igor Britanov, faced an impossible decision: surface in international waters revealing their position to American forces or risk losing the entire vessel and its nuclear payload. Number 1. Tupolev 2 U-144. Abandoned Fleet. Outside Moscow sits a graveyard of supersonic dreams. The abandoned fleet of Soviet Tupolev Tu-144 aircraft, once intended to demonstrate technological superiority over the Western world. These aircraft, nicknamed Konkordsky by Western observers due to their similarity to the Anglo-French Concorde, represent one of the Soviet Union's most ambitious and ultimately failed technological showcases. The Tu-144 actually beat Concorde into the air by 2 months, making its maiden flight on December 31, 1968. Soviet leaders celebrated this achievement as proof of communist engineering prowess. The aircraft could carry 140 passengers at speeds over 200 miles per hour, crossing the vast Soviet territory in hours rather than days. 14 of these supersonic marvels were built before the program's cancellation. Are you seeing this video that is appearing on the screen? Take advantage of the fact that I have separated it especially for you and click now to watch it. Well, that's it, and until next time, Curious One.